Another big Chargers signing is in the books. General Manager Joe Hortiz, he's working quietly, but he keeps finding the best players for this Los Angeles roster. I will say, while the big move hasn't happened, there's a lot of depth and a lot of good depth on this Chargers team. This comes to us from ESPN's Adam Schefter. Free agent defensive tackle Dalvin Tomlinson has reached an agreement with the Chargers. I like this move. There was some interior defensive line help that the Chargers definitely needed. And you're going out and grabbing a veteran presence that can add into this roster and add into this crew. Over 20 tackles last season. That's a pretty darn good clip. Interior defensive linemen, they're not going to make a ton of plays, but they can make some important plays. So getting a guy like Dalvin Tomlinson in is going to be a gigantic deal. The rest of our video today is going to be discussing my latest Chargers mock draft after NFL free agency. And I'll just be honest, Dalvin Tomlinson, you did mess up one of the needs that I have for the Chargers, but you can never have too many interior defensive linemen. Let's get into that video. Who will the Chargers take in the latest NFL draft? This is Chargers Now. I am your host, Will Ortner. We're going to discuss who the Chargers are going to take in the NFL draft after free agency because the Chargers' needs have changed a little bit. There is a position that was always going to be a need. There is a position that actually originally was not a need going into free agency, but now that the Chargers were not able to fill that position, it has definitely become a spot that the Chargers are going to have to focus on. If you want the Chargers to dominate the NFL draft, make sure that you come in and like the video. What do I mean by dominate? Of course, I mean that the Chargers go in and draft the player that you want them to get. Because I do think that the Chargers have a great opportunity to really improve this roster in this draft. Right now, the Chargers have some pretty glaring needs in some specific spots, although it does feel like the Chargers might think they're in a better position than other teams. Right now, the Chargers definitely need to get more interior offensive line help. I understand that Cole Strange was signed. I understand that Trevor Penning was signed. I still think the Chargers are going to want some interior offensive line help. You need an edge rusher. With Odafe Oweh heading over to the Washington Commanders, Chargers need to find a big-time edge rusher, and I think they can in this draft. A little interior defensive line help could be nice to go out and get, although it is important to know that in free agency, the Chargers have slightly addressed that. And then, of course, I do think that the Chargers could do with a safety. You can never have too many defensive backs. When we look at the draft picks in this draft for the Chargers, you have a first through a fourth round pick. Then you're going to miss out on the fifth. You get a sixth round pick, and then you're going to miss out on the seventh. I think these are plenty of picks for the Chargers to really hit on this draft, who it is supposed to be a little bit of a weaker draft, but I will say that the Chargers can definitely take advantage of the key players that are in this draft. So I ask you, who do you think the Chargers are going to take? I am going to dive in to my first pick, and I want to make it very clear. Vega Ione was not available at pick 22 in this mock draft, and that is why the Chargers had to go with Akheem Mesidor, the defensive lineman, defensive edge rusher out of Miami. Now, I understand why some people might say, hey, Akheem Mesidor, he's a little bit older. I'm a little bit wary of taking a guy like him that high. I'll tell you right now, if Mesidor is there at 22, you want him in LA. This kid is an absolute demon. He can get after the passer, a little bit more of a quick twitch bend guy, where Ruben Bain was obviously more of the big, strong pass rusher. I'll tell you right now, Mesidor can get after the passer. He's decent in the run game, definitely better in the pass rushing game, but he is someone that is going to be a star, in my personal opinion, in the NFL. When you look at the production that the Chargers are losing from Odafe Oweh, there's a clear need for this team and for this squad to have that premier edge rusher opposite of Khalil Mack and Thule. And I think that Akheem Mesidor can be that guy. You're also not wasting a ton of money on a player because if it doesn't work out, well, you just move on from Mesidor later on. In my personal opinion, Akheem Mesidor should be the pick if he's there and Vega Ione is not, because Vega Ione would be my number one target. Grade the Akheem Mesidor draft choice A, B, C, D, or F down below in the comment section. Hopefully you say, hey, Will, you hit it out of the park because of who was available when you were picking. Next, the Chargers need to address some interior offensive line help, and I think that the best way to do that is to go into the SEC and get the great Chase Bisontis for the next pick. Chase Bisontis is the type of player that I do believe can help build up on the interior of this offensive line. Now, I understand that the grades might not be necessarily exactly what you want from the Texas A&M Aggie, but he is still a big-bodied interior offensive lineman that is not afraid to road grade and push people around while also being great in the pass pro. Now, he's no Vega Ione, but not many people are. When you look at that pass pro grade, I think that is important to kind of note because he was blocking for a quarterback that was a little bit more of a mobile quarterback, a quarterback that was not afraid to move around and run around. I think by the moves that general manager Joe Hortiz has made during NFL free agency, it is very clear that the Chargers need to go and draft at least one guard in this draft. And in my opinion, Bisontis, he is going to help fill that guard position and that need that you have there. Next, we're going to go into the third round and who the Chargers could possibly be taking. I think that this one might be the pick that I get in a little bit of trouble for. Zakee Wheatley at number 86, a safety out of Penn State. And I understand that this is a little bit of a reach here, but I'll tell you what, sometimes you have to go and get the best player in a position that you have need in. Wheatley had a very good 2025 in college football, ended up coming away with 74 tackles. Well, that's probably because Penn State was giving up a lot of big plays. Not him, but Penn State themselves. Like I said, I understand that this is a bit of a reach, but there comes a point in time in the draft where, hey, sometimes you need to move on. And in my opinion and my decision for this draft, I had no trades. So in this position, it felt like it was best for the Chargers to go after a safety, a position that they do have some need in, and you take the best available player and hope that your coaches can coach them up. Hit that sub button before we get into the last couple of picks for this mock draft. You do not want to miss out on any of the latest or greatest news that we've got going on today's show, and we're going to keep you updated with all the news around the Chargers. Next, I've got Tim Keenan, an interior defensive lineman, another SEC type of player. Another guy that is not afraid to go in and make big-time plays. He's good against the run, while also being fairly good against the pass as well. Not afraid to get some pressure up the middle. Now, there is a lot of development that he is going to have to undergo as a player in the National Football League. But to sit here and say that he would not be a strong depth piece for this Chargers team would be a lie. And I do think that the Chargers are going to try and build up the rest of this squad by adding in more depth. I don't know that the big swing is necessarily coming for the Chargers, which is fine. The big swing does not have to come. If you continue to build a team with a lot of depth that can survive injuries, you got a good shot at going pretty darn far in the National Football League. With my 6th round pick and my final pick of my mock draft, I went into a position where, well, look, you just need more interior offensive line help. Jaeden Roberts is the man that I chose to go with. Another player that is not afraid to get after it on the interior offensive line. Another guy from the SEC. If you can't tell, I know that it just means more over there. You're going to get more depth, and I think that the best way for the Chargers to continue to build up that interior offensive line, just throw a bunch of depth pieces at it. Throw a bunch of guys at the wall and see who sticks. And I think a guy like Roberts, depending on how he gets built up, and if Mike McDaniel likes him and wants to add him into the squad, it could end up being a big-time move for this team. What are the Chargers going to do? I'm not entirely sure, but I do feel like I've pinpointed at least a couple of big additions that they could be willing to make in this draft. What are your thoughts on my Chargers mock draft? Let me know down below in the comment section. Do you like what I'm doing? Do you not like what I'm doing? Do you like the direction that I have the Chargers going in? Thank you guys so much for viewing today's video. Make sure that you hit that thumbs up button. Had a lot of fun covering you through NFL free agency. Just like we've always said, if there's more moves that get made by the Chargers, you don't want to miss it. The best way to not miss that is by hitting that subscribe button. Because the minute that there is a move that the Chargers make, we'll make sure we get that video out to you. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today, and bolt up.